What's up, everyone? I'm James Baney, and I'm here with Kyle Larson, and we are getting ready to do a book review and then spoiler discussion of Tempest Runner. All right, man, we are back again. This
Indeed.
one, another High Republic book, no surprise, right? It
Right.
in some ways kind of limits our discussion a little bit. But that being said, it was very different. This book is an audio drama. We've only done one other audio drama on this show, which was the Dr. Aphra audio drama. And I think that one might, I could be wrong on this, but I think that might be one of the first times we ever did a What Happened in video, which is also on the channel, which helps people
right.
who maybe didn't read this book or had forgotten it because it had been a long time and they just wanted a refresher. We did those videos specifically because we're like, not everybody's going to have like 8 hours to go through an audio drama or something like that. So let's do this. I think technically our first one might have been like an Alphabet Squadron book or something. But anyway, yeah, the audio drama books are very different from the regular books. Somewhat kind of similar to audiobooks. But we'll talk about that a little bit. Hey man, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. I'm excited to talk about this. I really enjoyed this this Tempest Runner.
So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna review the book as if you have not read the book. So that's cool if you're watching right now. We'll tell you when we're going to get into spoilers. We'll tell you when we're going to get into that discussion for the people who have read it. But for the people who haven't, let's go ahead and review. I want to talk a little bit about this book before we get started. This is Star Wars Tempest Runner, The High Republic, long name. It was written by Cavan Scott and was released August 31st, 2021. This is, of course, Random House Audio, and it has a full cast of voice actors, multiple people playing multiple characters, and it takes place after The Rising Storm. It's just another book in the succession of the new High Republic stories that we have been getting. They're kind of doing the Marvel approach, maybe every once in a while telling a backstory or a lead up or something, but for the most part, every new release is going to be after the last one. So now that we're in it, let's talk a little bit about our initial thoughts and scores. What did you score this book? What was your initial thoughts of Tempest Runner after you finished it?
I loved this story, this book, this audio drama, whatever medium you want to put it into, and I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I was blown away. I really, and it's difficult to kind of score it compared to like a novel because there's just so much that went into it. I think the cast was phenomenal. I love the sound design. I love the utilization of, the familiar Star Wars effects and John Williams' score and the original music that they put into it as well. Like sometimes you'd hear stuff in the background. And just the story was really great. Lourna D is a character that I've been intrigued by. But this did such a great job of presenting her in an entirely new context and giving the backstory. So I really, really enjoyed it. What did you think of it?
I liked it as well. Yeah, I definitely gave it a good score. I forgot where I wrote it. I know that I gave it a 7.6. I just didn't. I thought I had it pulled up and I didn't have it pulled up. I gave it a 7.6, which is pretty good for me. But the thing about it is I usually listen to the audiobooks, and the audiobooks do such a good job of adding the music, adding the sound effects, and whoever they bring in to do the voice. Granted, it's not 2 different people or 3 different people or whatever to do it. They usually have their own understanding of the voice, so you're kind of getting the different voices anyway. So I actually think this is very similar to an audiobook, and in a lot of cases I kind of forgot that it even was an audiobook. And also in some cases too found it hard because they had multiple female Twilight characters all talking to each other at the same time, and I'm like, that it would have been very helpful to change up their species or something here. I, just for the sake of voice recognition, because sometimes I'm like, I'm not really sure which female Twilight character is talking right now, because it sounds like Lourna, but it sounds like Sesta. Like it's kind of confusing back and forth. That being said, though, I usually don't like when stories flip back and forth. I think this did a very good job at it. I think it was very clear that they were able to navigate. Now we're in this world, and I don't even really know what it was that caused that, because it's not like they say back in present day, or anything like that. They just somehow, it felt right that the switches were when they happened. I think maybe because it was dialogue based, like, I've been in a worse place than this before, or something like that.
Right,
and then you just kind of infer at that moment that you're about to get a flashback back to the other time. So I was cool with the time skips. But the story itself too, like, I think did a really good job of explaining with interest how she became this Tempest Runner and what's been happening to her now, and how the two stories go back and forth as far as how her life seems to bookend itself, or somehow her life seems to mirror itself in a lot of occasions. It almost seems like when she does the right thing, she continues that thread. When she does the wrong thing, the same circumstances and repercussions happen to her, regardless of when or where the situation she's in. She seems to kind of just be in this like loop, if you will, of good and bad, loop, good and bad. And this book showcases it very well by moving between the two segments. So, but when I was, when I'm looking at my long, gigantic list of things, I'm like moving it up. I'm like, did I like it better than this book? Did I like it better than this book? So I landed on 7.6. That was where we were at. Let's go ahead then and get into the spoilers. Let's get into the discussion. So if you haven't read the book, maybe stop now, maybe like the video, come back, or something like that, so you remember to do that. But if you have read the book, let's get into the spoilers. Kyle, what was your favorite part of this book, or maybe just favorite thing?
I feel kind of bad because it was like a really brutal scene, but I was like, there's so many points in this book I found myself cheering for Lourna, and it's when she goes back to her home world, Aloth, that was taken from her in a very cruel fashion, and because she was manipulated to basically have her family killed and have her homeworld turned into this like drug den, where people are harvesting spice and exploiting the world instead of she wants to originally sell the spice to kind of empower the world and give back to it. And when she goes back and gets revenge on the people who betrayed her, I was like clapping, like sitting in my room listening to this. And that was it, but also like conversely, if I wanted to go with a more, and it was kind of tied up with the scene where she's talking to Counselor Woodcock and, is very vulnerable for the first time too, and confides in him who she is, because she's been hiding her identity the whole time. And just kind of her belief for the first time that she can really be vulnerable and really talk to this person and open up to them. I thought those were probably sorry, I know it's one scene, but kind of tied for that. So, but both times equally cheering for her. So how about yourself?
Man. So I always say favorite part, favorite thing. That what you described, her going back, is probably my favorite part. But I think it all kind of ties into what is my favorite thing about the book. Like when I take away from this book, my thoughts, my favorite thing about this book was that in 3 separate areas of her life, she trusted one other individual and said, this is the way it is. You have to see that. Let's, the two of us, reinvent the wheel here and re-establish a new order together. And in all 3 occasions, she was backstabbed by that person.
Right.
And I thought that there was a lot of really good writing, and almost like that was where that book, when you're coming up with the story of this book, it's like that's where you wanted to go. And it was very well illustrated that is a repeating thing in her life, much like a Loki character or something like that.
Right.
Where you just keep going through this cycle of her saying, it's me and Bala against the world. We're gonna change things. We're gonna, go against my family and all this other stuff. And he ends up backstabbing her and throws her into slavery. And then later she sees that the Tempest Runners are out to kill Askar Ro. And she's like, this is messed up. Whatever this system is not working. So she goes to him and says, it can be the 2 of us. Let's get rid of that. Let's reprocess this and make the Nihil better. And he's like, that's not how it works. No. And like almost, he says, you're going to be rewarded for this. But ultimately, like, she's kind of punished, and now she feels stuck. Like she could die at any second. And it was just a terrible thing. And she was very upset and angry about that. And then, of course, later in the future, you have that situation with the Counselor Whittick, who she even offered to him that this prison system is broken. It's obviously not working, and let's try to overthrow this. Now, he never went through with that process, but she offered that to him, and at the end of the day, he ended up being someone who was not really interested in her and was interested in his own means, which I also kind of feel is a little bit like not true.
It was weird. I thought that scene,
which I feel kind of bad for him, because when you're trying to help somebody, like, you're trying to help the homeless because they're homeless, but you're also trying to help the homeless because that's how it is like I don't want to say a selfish act. There's actually a Friends episode about this, but like, it is something that that's how you can improve your own life, is by giving back. And you know what I mean? And that is like, yes, it would be great if I had some success after a career of having a bunch of failures. I want you to be rehabilitated because I want you to be rehabilitated, but I also want to know that it was worth something. And my life work of doing this was, I could be rewarded for that or have some success in that. I feel like that's a little like, that's still a good thing to do. I don't feel like he really like betrayed her, but it was interesting that they set up the book in these three ways that, again, she felt like she was being betrayed by someone, and that their own interests were more important than her own well-being or something along those lines. Right. So that was by far my favorite thing about this book, how it like bookended itself really well.
Right. I agree. I totally agree. Because oftentimes it was, she was at the kind of under somebody, not necessarily control. I don't know if that's the right word, but she found herself kind of caught up unwittingly in somebody else's design. Under
the thumb of.
Yeah, without even kind of realizing it until the very end. Yeah. And I love how, it's divided into sections: revenge, rebirth, and renewal. And that's how you kind of, how the sections of the audiobook are divided up. It's very good.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Now let's continue just the general discussion. I want you to start on this one too. Okay. Lourna D, good person, bad person. Which is it?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I really dove into in my review yesterday, is that, I felt like the point of this story was, because there's that adage of like, no villain believes that they're the villain, right? And it's interesting because at several points in this story, Lourna D does believe she's the villain, but it's when she's doing the right thing. It's when or what you and I, or like the Republic or the Jedi would view as like the right thing. Sure. That's when she kind of drops back down into like, I'm a bad person. I've done these awful things. I don't deserve this. And so I rooted for her, despite the awful things that I've read about her doing in there. And I didn't necessarily, I was able to kind of compartmentalize that in the story, because now I know where she came from. I know some of the awful things and the manipulations that she's experienced it. And I was basically rooting for her as the hero to get her agency back, because it's something that she hasn't had for a very long time, maybe never, arguably never. And, redemption is often used in terms of like good and evil, in terms of like, coming back from evil and doing good. And I felt like this was a redemption story for Lourna, but not necessarily in the contrasts of good and evil or light and dark. It was a redemption story for her coming back and being able to look at herself in the mirror and being like, I know who I am now. I know what I want to do for myself.
Reflection story?
Reflections, yes. And it just, that was one of the reasons I scored it so high, is because it's such the nuance there of her journey and her journey to finding herself, and kind of a redemption for herself, not for anyone else. I thought was really good. So like, that's the thing, is I don't know if I can cast her into like a hero and a villain. It's more about like, I'm just happy that she knows who she is now, and going forward in these stories, I'll know that like Lourna D's doing whatever she's going to do for her own reasons. It's not because she's doing it for the Nihil or for, revenge or to get the Republic or anything. It's Lourna D doing Lourna D. So, where would you kind of have her fall in between?
I mean, I'm glad you said that. Like, everything you're saying is very similar to my thoughts, just like on a different kind of understanding or zone, but it's all the same. Like, I spent most of this book thinking, oh, they're redeeming this character. This character they're showing you her tragic past so that you can now feel bad for her. And when she overcomes all those things and does the right thing and becomes a good character, by the end, we can look at that as transformation. But the book doesn't end that way. The book ends with her, again, going back to what she knows, which is, the way we see it, the bad thing to do. My bringing my belief in just regular world is she's still a villain. She's still a bad guy. This is a bad person. This is a person who was not redeemed, but had the option to be redeemed and chose to continue to be bad. That being said, though, it is really interesting how they've kind of chosen to add this sort of, they showed us the bad stuff to make us side with her and to have an understanding of why this individual is the way they are. Sometimes in villains, even with someone like Thanos, you can be like, I get it, but that's not a good thing. In Lourna D's case, you can say, I think you have your own self-justification here. Like, I think you think that's justice. And therefore, it doesn't feel like you're just choosing the wrong thing. It feels like they're choosing the right thing from their point of view.
Right. There's no malice there. Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes when people have the option for redemption and they still choose to do the wrong thing, even they themselves know they're choosing to do the wrong thing. But I feel like in Lourna's case, a lot of times she feels like she's doing the right thing, like by killing the person who murdered her family and sold her to slavery. Right. And
I was cheering her on.
and like kind of punishing her planet for betraying her as well. Like she was on that side and they were cool with her just being tossed aside. So like in a lot of ways, I don't know if that's so much like Kevin Scott, like the author, coming up with that, but I think we're forced to think this is Lourna's perspective, and it really does make it difficult to kind of understand: is she a good person, a bad person? Is she a good guy, villain, whatever? But it's that self-justification thing that I think makes it interesting, because you're like, what you're doing is wrong, but I totally understand it. You just gotta stop. You just got to stop doing that kind of thing. What else do you want to talk about, man? There's so much to this book. Do you want to keep going down that path of like good versus bad, opportunity, redemption, all this other stuff?
Well, one thing that I thought about, kind of going back to redemption or whatever the moral code that Lourna has been navigating her life, is that I felt like it's hard to see redemption, or for her to see redemption as a evil coming back from evil towards good, or vice versa, when she kind of has this outlook that the whole galaxy is evil, in a sense, that like like it's hard to be good in an awful world, that kind of mentality. And I got the sense of that from her very often. Not that she's like a victim or anything like that, but it's just like, she sees it, kind of how, like in The Last Jedi, how DJ's, to Finn, like it's all a machine, like, and I got the sense that she, especially when she arrives on, the restitution, this rehabilitation ship, but is very similar to like, this cyclical incarceration rather than rehabilitation, but they do it under the guise of rehabilitation. She's just very, very cynical about that, because she's seen that, like, she saw her own planet really struggling to survive, and the desperate things that they had to do that ultimately cost her family and cost the world its autonomy, because they were trying to like be a part of this, we are all the Republic stuff. And it's very hard for her, who's been on the fringes of that, to see anything, see any sort of good in the galaxy. So I thought that was an important kind of context for her. It's just, she didn't just wake up one day and be like, I'm gonna be a bad guy, but she's been trying to walk a path, and it seems impossible for her to walk a path in a forest that's so dark and evil, kind of, in a way that she sees as. So you're exactly right.
Her choices at the beginning, or of the timeline, right? I could say the beginning of the book too, but her choices when she was just the daughter of this family and stuff, and she had this boyfriend who was kind of a bad guy and was a seller of spice and things. Her choices then were nowhere near as narcissistic as they became later.
Right.
Her choices then were, we have to feed these people. They're hungry. They're getting angry, and it's just not good for this planet. We need to do this one small bad thing, which is selling spice not to our people. We're not feeding it to our people. We're not making bad. We're selling it to whoever wants to buy it, right? But for the good of other people. By the end of this book, we've seen her path through life, and how it's turned her into this person that is like, if I'm hungry, I don't care who else is hungry, I'm eating the food. If I need money, or if I have a lot of money, if I have a lot of power, it doesn't matter who else has those things as long as I have them. I need to be the leader. I need to be in control. And it doesn't matter who's below me, or who dies, or who we have to kill to get it. It is all about consuming to myself. And right. I will lead these people, these Tempests, when she was in the Nihil, when she was in the prison system, and they became her new Tempests, all this, it all has to do with her being at the top and looking out for herself, and no one's going to tell her anything more. It's all self-centered. It's this book as a whole, just in general, I'll jump back. I'll give you this little bit and let you talk again. It is a development story for this one character, because now from this point on, I will look at Lourna different. Had this book been about Pan and his story and his justification, I probably would have looked at him different. But I think that they want Lourna to be a longer character. Obviously, Pan's dead at this point. Yeah. So I think what they want to do is they want to revitalize this character. You saw her one way. Now you see her this way. Let's move forward. What are your thoughts on this being just strictly a development or a reskinning of this character from this point on?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. You're absolutely right. Like, I think that on one hand, that is something that this book accomplishes, tenfold is that you know, I'll never look at this character the same way again, and also going forward it frees up a lot of the exposition that they might have to do to show where she's going, or where she might go next, whatever that role is, whether it's the Nile or she goes beyond that. But I also think too, it in a way it really did serve more so than anything. They've kind of dropped little seeds of this in other books, but it, for the first time, I really felt like they did a good job of showing how, you know, other people see the Republic and see the Jedi, and it's not in this rose, you know, these rosy colored glasses, that it's a very raw, real, brutal galaxy out there, and that not everybody's like super excited to be like, we are all the Republic, we are all the Jedi. It's, you know, it is, I thought they did a very good job of, you know, making things, everything is more complicated than good or bad, light and dark, giving a lot of gray area to the galaxy, and just to, you know, the state of the times that things are in. So I feel like going forward, I'm going to be more skeptical of, you know, what the Republic's doing. I'm going to be more skeptical of like what the Jedi are doing at this point, maybe, and kind of looking at it through a different lens and thinking about how, you know, the Nile and people like Lourna D and people that have gone to this side of the struggle in the galaxy, how they're looking at things as well. It allows me to have a lot more empathy for that, rather than just seeing like these are brutal marauders that are, you know, traveling the galaxy, upsetting, things like that. It really kind of reminded me of like, you know, at the end of Solo, when you find out why Enfys Nest has been doing these things. It kind of reminded me, it's not, definitely isn't the same thing, but it runs kind of a similar thing of like, things are way more morally ambiguous in this giant galaxy composed of all of these different species, different civilizations who have their own histories and different relationships with each other. So I thought it really did a good job of kind of reminding people that like, hey, nothing is that simple in the galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. And a lot of this book takes place in a prison.
Yes.
With other prisoners, you know, who are there for pretty bad things. I kept wanting to make the joke. I was going to make it earlier. Green is the new black.
Yeah, book. Right. I said that in my review. I said that it has
really?
kind of an orange is the new black in Star Wars. Yeah. You know, it really did, because that show does very similar things.
Yeah. So to me, it was kind of having an understanding of how prisoners, you know, maybe got to where they are, and maybe a little bit of justification, or maybe sort of an understanding of why they did what they did to get them there. It's not always just like, I killed because I'm crazy or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's always some sort of sensical thing. And when you're talking, when your main core of characters are, you know, spice runners and prisoners and other things like that, like all these problematic people, I guess you could say, then it kind of gives you an understanding of why, like you were saying, people would become the Nile, because no matter what, it was the Republic that put them in prison. Like, their life is the way that it is right now because somebody from the Republic, a Jedi, or some sort of political whatever person from the center of the galaxy, they made the decision that whatever they did was bad and they're going to be punished for it. So those are the types of people that she's living with and she's surrounded herself with. Even when she has the opportunity to be whatever she wants, she still decides to be, you know, not a Mandalorian, but she decides to be a Mandalorian person in cover her face, like kill these bad guys and stuff like that, like as she sees them as bad, or it's part of the process of turning into that narcissistic person. She doesn't really care if they're good or bad. She's going to get paid to deliver them, you know,
right.
To fix the problem for whoever wants to pay the most money. And that is like her middle story right there. And that's that ambiguous sort of morality where it's like before she was here, then now she's in this middle where she's like, well, whoever will give me the most money, good or bad, it doesn't really matter. And then by the end of it, she turns into like a Nihil like leader. And she's like, we do things because they're selfish, you know, We want to party. We want to have money. We want to have food. We don't believe in the people who are throwing us into prison or treating us these way, these counselors that are the crazy people. Do you really think this works? Like, talking to me like a therapist every day is going to change the way I see the galaxy? Like, she thinks all that stuff is crazy. So it makes a lot of sense. Out of the two stories, the present story and her backstory, which one did you like better?
Wow. I mean, it kind of shifted. I mean, I guess I'd say I appreciated the backstory more, but I like the present because, you mentioned there's a lot of masks and as symbolism, and there's a lot of her not having her agency because she gets caught up in these schemes that and I don't mean to imply like she's naive or ignorant or anything like that. It's just like things are kind of often moving so fast for her that she has to take a chance and participate whether she wants to or not. But I think I like the present day because by the end of the book, she knows her past informs her present, and she knows who she is, and she knows who she wants to be, and she knows what she wants to do, for better or for worse, whether that's, narcissism, whether that's, getting what's hers. She is who she is, and she's not sorry about it anymore. She's not, she doesn't have any illusions. She doesn't have to wear any more masks. She's Lourna D. She's not Sal. She's not, the daughter of some regal Rylothian, feudal lord. She's Lourna D. Yeah. She's a Tempest Runner. And like, that's who she wants to be. She makes a conscious decision to call herself a Tempest Runner again. She makes a conscious decision to go back to the Nihil and be like, all right, I believe in what you're doing, but I'm going to be an active participant in it. I'm not going to follow your orders or take any more of your crap. It's like Ahsoka or something. Like I was Ahsoka. Right. I went under this like fake name for a while, and I wasn't really sure what was going on. Then at some point I decided I needed to be Ahsoka again. Even though I call myself Fulcrum, she obviously takes on her name and is who she is. She just has to come back to that side. And for the same reasons that I enjoyed, I know a lot of people were kind of iffy about Ahsoka's pop up in The Mandalorian because the character was so starkly different from who we saw in the Clone Wars and Rebels. I kind of liked that because I was like, Ahsoka's been through some stuff, clearly, and like she's not going to like show up and start making jokes and or not that was all she ever did, but like she's probably not going to be as optimistic about the galaxy when she's seen the things that she's seen. And I appreciated that in the performance, the same way that like Lourna D at the very end, she's gone through some things. She's gone through a transformation. And I thought that's a really great way that the story ended.
You have such a more elegant way of explaining why you liked that part of the book better. My answer was I liked the beginning, the lead up, the past better. But for very dumb reasons.
No. I mean, I feel like you're saying the same thing. So,
well, yeah. The reason I liked the lead up story better was because I felt like it was more spacious and more telling of the whole galaxy and how she fits into it. Where so she's on a planet and there's all these like other systems that are like she owes taxes to, and she's trying to work within the planet, and then but when she gets kicked off, now she's like in the slave world, and then she becomes like a bounty hunter for a while, and then she's part of the Nihil and all of their impact across the whole galaxy, whereas almost all of the rest of the story felt like I was in a 100 square feet block, like with 4 walls around me at all times. Right. And I felt like anything that was happening was only like 100 yards away or something, or something. Like I know that math doesn't even, I said 100 square feet. Like, well, yeah. I don't know. I just felt like I was in prison walls in the second book, and anytime anything was happening, it was happening over in the cafeteria. And so they just needed to like leave there, like you're in a high school or something,
Right.
Like, oh, it's in this other building, so we just need to like get up and walk over to that other building because that's where everything's happening. Or, oh, it's lights out time. All right, let's just go over here to this area. And just reading it, I'm really glad. Maybe that's part of the reason I'm glad that they switched between the two. Is I felt like whenever I got to leave the prison, I felt free, even as a reader or a listener in this case. Because it felt very confining, and that's probably brilliant writing, to be honest with you. Like, you say
Right.
that's a bad thing. Like, this book felt like I was stuck between four walls. Well, it's a book about prison. So
Right. Yeah.
like,
No, I mean,
I think that's kind of the point. That being said, I enjoyed the freedom of the rest of the galaxy and her exploration of herself outside of her world and how she became what she became, especially since that's how we know her. Like, the book is called Tempest Runner. Cool. How did she become a Tempest Runner? It showcases that. The other half of the book, the present day, is how she became a Tempest Runner again, if you will. And I'm like,
exactly.
okay. I mean, that's cool. And she goes back to it, and I like that, and it all fits into a big thing. I still would say that if you were like, when does this book take place, or what is this book about? It's not about the past. It's not something that takes place in the past. This is the current story. This is what the book is about. It's about her coming back to becoming a Tempest Runner. And all the backstory stuff is just details to kind of help you understand the present better.
Yep.
That being said, though, let's move into kind of like, where do we think it's going? Do you think there's a chance that Lourna D ever becomes the Eye? Do you think she's the one that kills Marchion Ro or takes over or whatever? Or do you think that the Nihil versus the Jedi is still going to be a bigger presence, and say it's like one of the Jedi who end up like Elzar Mann or something like that, or Avar Kriss or something, that ends up being the person to defeat the Nihil? Marchion, maybe specifically.
Yeah, I feel like Lorna's path, like, even though it's kind of back with the Nihil, I almost, I mean, I could see on one hand, like, if that happened, that's totally logical. That would make sense. I'm sure it would be handled well and be great.
Her becoming the Eye?
Her becoming the Eye, yeah. I could see that, but like, it's honestly something I haven't thought about. Like, it's more like, where does she go beyond the Nihil even? Because I do feel like, I feel like whatever ends up becoming of the Nihil, obviously we know that they're going to be defeated at some point. I feel like she goes beyond that, and there's some greater purpose. And I haven't really thought about whether that's good or bad. It's weird. It's one of those things where I just was like, the ending is so definitively like, it's just Lourna being Lourna, and she is who she is now, that I was like, the fact that she goes back to the Nihil is kind of like, it wasn't like a huge detail for me. And it's weird because that's like ultimately like the purpose of or one of the big purposes of the story. So I honestly, like, I wish I had a better answer than that, but I feel like it's whatever Lourna ends up being in these greater stories, in this greater part of the Star Wars lore, is going to be more about her rather than the Nihil. Like, she'll be known for whoever she is. Like, if the Nihil falls, she'll be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to go do something else now with these people. I don't have to be a Tempest Runner anymore. I can be this or that, because she's so adaptable, and we see that with the past. Like, she's so adaptable into whatever situation she's thrown in. So I just have a lot of faith that she's going to be doing whatever she needs to do in the galaxy to get by. How about you?
I hate to make the Marvel comparison, but when I'm looking at like how those big epic stories come out, I sometimes think of like, I think of Marchion as like Thanos, right? And then I think of the Tempest Runners below them like Gamora and Nebula, these other really high-ranking people who are very clearly loyal to this person, but at the same time kind of like not, they would overthrow that person or get rid of him. I think in that case, Gamora is more of the, I want to overthrow him because he's bad. And Nebula was kind of the, I want to overthrow him because I want the power, right? And you had those two sisters clash. That being said, when Thanos is overthrown, Nebula and Gamora both became good guys. And when I look at the Tempest Runners, I don't see Zetar. I don't see Pan. I mean, those stories have kind of been told as well. Zetar still has an option, but I see him being a throwaway bad guy or whatever. He'll be killed at some point. But I see Lourna as being the interesting one. I don't see her ever going good, especially after this book. So no matter what, I feel like she will always be on that side of the law. and she will always be in opposition to the Jedi. So she will be defeated in some way. But I still see Marchion as the big bad of the Nihil. So it kind of makes me wonder, are they going to have the big bad defeated by Lourna D? Is she going to become the new big bad of the Nihil and have the Jedi wipe out the Nihil by killing her? Or is Marchion going to be the one to eventually kill Lourna D, and then that he'll, I don't know, have his new superpower, the Leveler or something like that, whatever it is, and he tries to take on the Jedi head on, and the Jedi defeat the Nihil by defeating the head as well. So I don't know.
Right.
I kind of saw it a couple different paths. I wanted to see, and your opinion was a little bit more like whatever they do is cool. I was hoping to get like a little bit of speculation out of that, because I think the more and more they build up Lourna, I mean, they're obviously giving her own book here. It makes me think that they have some idea, but I don't know if that idea supersedes what has been the head of this evil organization against the Jedi. All of the folly that has happened throughout the High Republic is because of Marchion Ro, you know?
Right.
It's because of the Nihil, but it's really because of Marchion Ro. He is the top. And so to have him defeated within his own community and have somebody rise up, I'm like, now you're just kind of shifting up the bad guys, you know? Now Harley Quinn has defeated the Joker and she's the new big bad. It's like, I don't know, that's weird to me, right?
Right.
I feel like the Joker will always be the person that needs to finish the fight with Batman.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting too, because like, you know, the Nihil, where we're at beyond these stories, beyond this and beyond Out of the Shadows, they're cornered now in a way. They're kind of, I mean, they do have this new weapon. They have a couple tricks up their sleeves still, but they lost Maurice Anteca. So it's
oh yeah,
you know,
I'll
they're
give you
in
what paths I have.
Yeah,
that's what
they don't
says.
have exactly, like they don't have all these different things. So that's kind of, it's going to be interesting to see, like, they're desperate now in a way. I mean, it doesn't imply desperation, but they are going to get to a point where they're running out of tricks to kind of, you know, get away from the Jedi or the Republic. And I feel like, yeah, we are going to see something come to a head with Lourna and Marchion in this struggle, because they'll eventually turn on each other at some point.
They're creating a new bag of tricks. They used to have the paths, but now that they don't have them, they have this new weapon that they're working on that's pulling ships out of hyperspace. Okay, that's a thing that's happening. You're also talking about the Leveler, which I mentioned before. He's now uncovered this ancient power that, you know, can kill Jedi and devastate and destroy land just like that in an instant. So he obviously has that too, but it's like, you're right in the sense that, like, what made the Nihil to begin with is gone, and they are having to quickly, I mean, they're almost like they're running out of Tempest, they're running out of people. Like, one of their strategies was to destroy a third of the Nihil in the first book. Like, there's 3 legs of our system, and our best bet is to just sacrifice one of those 3. It's like, it's pretty nuts, but yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point we've probably talked out as much as we can from this book, Tempest Runner. Any last thoughts on the book before we wrap up?
Jessica Alame, who is the actor who voiced Lourna D. Well, I don't know why my brain just spaced her name. Lourna D.
No worries.
Did a fantastic job. The whole cast is phenomenal, but I really feel like she was, like, obviously the star of the show, but just gave it a fantastic performance. And I'll never not hear that voice now when I read Lourna D. So big shout out to her. And it's just a wonderful story and use of the medium. I feel like that was so effective. You know, it would have been a great novel, but I'm really glad I got to experience the story and the way that it was laid out and in that medium. So
yeah. And speaking of the voices, like, I was very happy that Mark Thompson was going to be redoing his role for Marchion Ro, because in the audiobooks I've been like, this voice is brilliantly, beautifully evil. Like,
Yes.
it's so innocent and light and calm and pleasant and pulls you in, but you can tell
Yeah.
it's dark and evil. It's all there. And I'm glad that if you have not read any of the audio or listened to the audiobooks and you've only been reading the actual physical novels, that now this medium it kind of forces you to hear some of those voices. And that voice to me has been the voice I hear in my head when I'm reading these books, because whether some of the books I have read physically, but others I've done through the audiobooks, and I've gotten those voices in my head. Panetta is another one, you know what I mean? That brilliant, deep voice or whatever that you just kind of imagine this species would have. It really brings to life the characters if you have not already done the audiobook and kind of heard those voices before, similar variations on those voices or understandings, interpretations of those voices. So that is it, guys. Thank you so much for sitting through all of this discussion. I feel like we've had a pretty good one on a book that, you know, an audiobook that was only about 6 hours long, generally would be considered a junior reader, but very heavy, very deep, very adult content. Lots of things, ethic, moral questions that get brought up in this book. So there was a lot to talk about. I'm glad that you stuck out and are still watching the video. If you enjoyed the discussion, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, let us know how you guys were feeling about it. Start a discussion with other people who have left comments. That would be great. Consider subscribing, because this is Star Wars Newsnet's channel, our YouTube channel. We do Resistance broadcast on here, as well as other things, shows like this. So if you're a Star Wars fan, we're here for you. I am James Baney. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Myra Trunks, and of course on the Resistance broadcast on a regular basis, twice a week. And then Kyle, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as well, Kyle D. Larson, and I regularly contribute book and comic reviews to Star Wars Newsnet, and also contribute to What the Force.
Awesome. Yeah. And one final thing is, if you guys have gone a while and you haven't, it's been a while since you've read this book and you want a refresher, we also do have the other video on the channel, which is What Happened, which kind of is no opinion. We're not giving our thoughts on it. We just kind of straight up tell the story as it is, so that you can watch that video in like 10 or 15 minutes or something like that and be like, oh, okay, I remember the details now. I got the overview of that story. That's what happened. So that's another way. Just remember that next time you kind of forget maybe an element of this story, but it's there for you. All right, well, that is it. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Bye.